Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, so we are in the center of the discussion, right? So most of the time we talk about human impact, health impact, and all that. When you say, when generally the discussion around environmental engineering is how it affects human health, but we need to expand our thought process. It's not just humans who are inhabiting, we have flora, fauna, the entire biota, and there is a close connection between the biota and the other elements of the earth, right? The five elements, or in in India we call it Panchabhutams. It's part of the whole our tradition, and no ancient literature calls them Panchabhutams, which control and also supply and also get impacted by us. Okay, so our focus is going to be on what are the supply and what is the impact of these Panchabhutams on humans and also the larger biota. Okay, and this is a picture which shows how population has been increasing over the years. So we call this explosive growth. It's not even exponential growth, right? The doubling time has been shortening, um, particularly after the industrial revolution. You can see that there is a huge increase in population, and so the demands we are placing on planet Earth has also shot up tremendously. Okay, and because of those demands, right? So there has been an impact, and UNFCCC claims, puts everything, summarizes this. Many organizations have summarized these impacts in multiple ways. This is one of the first which came out. And as we are all familiar with, climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution or degradation of land, water, and air has been the triple causes for the planetary crisis, the three major causes, right? And most of the time we find climate change being talked about a lot, right? Right now, I think almost everybody on this planet knows about climate change, right? But how many of us know about the huge biodiversity losses which are happening? Have we put any numbers? Do you remember how much of uh, biodiversity we are losing as we speak, right? And pollution has been there, we are aware of it, right? But not much action has been taken. When you see pollution of land, water, and air, as environmental engineers, we have been talking, learning, no, for several decades about pollution. That was the primary focus of environmental engineers, right? And how to remediate it, how to assess it, and all that. Okay, but the momentum what climate change has, okay, IPCC and know what has happened over the last 2 decades has not caught up with the pollution aspects. So that's something which is very serious. We need to take note of. Climate change, of course, is important, right? It's not less important than pollution, but it is, I would say, it is a ticking bomb, whereas pollution is like hurting us every minute of every day, right? So whereas climate change is more seasonal, right? When now this time of the year, November, December in Chennai, everybody's mind is worried about what? Rains and floods, right? And it was not the case at all. Like even when I came back from the US, or when I was here 20 years ago, I came back from US to come to IIT Madras. Um, that was not at all a concern, right? Most of the time, Chennai, when everybody, like even from people from north, has to choose IIT Madras as the university where they want, even with their ranking and all that. The biggest concern they used to have about Chennai, picking Chennai as their undergraduate school was, anybody knows? Although it is a rated institute, ranked institute, and all that, what was the concern? What would the parents say? If yes, hot, humid, that is one thing. Then, but most of the coastal cities are like that in India. Yeah. Other than that, not much. Chennai, everybody speaks English. The biggest concern, if you talk to your parents, you would know, right, is the water problem, right, in summer, water shortage, right? Chennai was known for water shortage, and even now it happens. In summer, there is drought, there is shortage in even drinking water supply, okay, but floods is a new thing, and it has happened over the last 10 years, I would say. It is from 2005, the biggest flood happened in Chennai. And after that, every year, people dread uh, December or November. Okay, so climate change has definitely contributed to this kind of a uneven distribution. And we see all these, what you see on the pictures, polar bears warming up and all that has been there around, in all these media, news, and everything. And of course, the carbon dioxide levels are shooting up. Very, very similar pattern, you would see, right? Compared to the population forecasting, what I showed, right? It's um, that's a cause of concern, and there's a lot of other impacts. It's not just drought and floods and rising sea levels, a lot of diseases spreading, agricultural loss, like in Kashmir, farmers are finding it difficult because apples are the main produce, right? And as it gets warmer, the apple trees are the fruiting apple trees are going to higher elevations rather than the accessible space, right? Like that, there's a huge impact on so many different sectors, agricultural, health. Okay, so we all have been hearing about it. Okay, and the second one is pollution. As I mentioned about it, it's happening around us. Right now, Delhi, everybody is talking about the Delhi's air pollution, water pollution is everywhere. Waste is another big, huge issue in our country, right? So, thermal power plants causing a lot of emissions, and all that comes down to impacting our health, human health primarily. I think we keep talking about it at least so that people get scared about it, right? Of course, planetary health, animal health is important, right? But this is something which people will realize and take action. So we keep showing these very, very scary pictures to people so that there is some action. So there are new chemicals coming up as we speak again, right? Chemical engineers, a lot of chemical engineers here. I always say that you are the people creating the problem and we are the ones solving it, right? So new chemicals are synthesized in multiple sectors, plastics, paper, agri sector, new pesticides, new medicines are being produced, okay, to treat. So everything has an impact. And of course, the one which doesn't come to the news in big way is the biodiversity loss, right? If you can read these figures, right, 68% from since 1970, the global wildlife population has fallen by 68%. 1 million plant and animal species are threatened with extinction because of human activities. Okay. And in 2019, every 6 seconds, one football pitch size of primary rainforest was lost, and 44 trillion US dollars of economic value, okay, is reduced or moderately. They are dependent on nature. So there's going to be an impact on economy also because of the biodiversity loss. So there are lots of figures and facts if you look around. Biodiversity is something which we as somehow engineers also miss this point when discussions are happening. It's mostly stops with pollution, right? So the impact of pollution is also biodiversity loss, and action needs to be taken. This figure depicts like what happens if no action is taken, right? So already we are at the tipping point, and so it's going to be even worse as we go down. So it's not just conservation of the biodiversity, we need to reverse all our actions, right? And that is linked to the big discussion we are going to have now in these 2 weeks, right? How sustainable our practices should be, how sustainable industries should think about when they are designing their products and making their products. Okay, and how sustainable should our consumption patterns be? I think it's a two-way road, right? One is production, one is the consumption. Everybody should be having the sustainability thinking, right? So that will only reverse the biodiversity loss, okay, because it takes a long time for the actual impact, positive impact, to see on ground. Okay, once we start taking actions, it takes a long time. There's a lag time between actions and then the results. Okay, so by 2100, if we need to see our biodiversity back, you need to have all these put in place. And the fourth dimension, although triple planetary crisis talks about these three, I think resources, the first Panchabhudam, or the 5 elements, what I discussed, needs to be paid attention, because we are depleting those resources because of the demands we have placed, and we are also degrading these resources, right? Both ways it is going to be harmful. And when you say resources, it can be non-renewable, it can be renewable resources, right? We put them into two big baskets. And again, when you're saying non-renewable, we all know it's an alarm bell, right? You can't, it is a fixed deposit, right? You cannot, there is no way you can get it replenished in the time frames of multiple lifetimes. Okay, so but although we know about it, like fossil fuels, minerals, right? Not much is being done on conserving them or reducing the consumption. Okay, so right now, because of climate change, some efforts are being made in terms of fossil fuel, reduction in consumption of fossil fuel, which is a good thing. Climate change, the efforts put on climate change is having a lot of positive effects on other things, but not enough, I would say. Okay, but at least there is a lot of awareness on the pollution aspects of the non-renewable resources and the conservation of that. Renewable resources, on the other hand, I think again, since it is renewable, it cannot be consumed more and more and more. It's just going to be renewed. Why do we have to worry about it? No, right? We have already seen that pollution, degradation has caused a lot of impact on the renewable resources, right? And even renewable resources, the time frames at which it can be renewed and the demand, they are not matching, right? So that's why, like those days, we had people living along the rivers, right? Civilization started along the rivers, and everything was taken from the river and put back into the river. Okay, but the river was able to sustain the pollution and come back. It had the capacity, the carrying capacity, they say, to come back. But then what has happened over time, when the demands went up, they are not, the time frames at which the nature could replenish itself is getting longer and longer, because the impact is more on them, right? So there is a delicate balance, and so we need to pay attention even to the renewable resources. Next. Yeah, this is a slide which actually shows how dependent we have become. Both, we started off with this graph shows that much earlier, long ago, we were completely dependent on we were dependent on renewable resources a lot, but then with the iron age, with concrete and minerals started being used in all our products and buildings and all that, more and more dependence on the non-renewable resources started, and we are at a stage where we are almost near total dependence on non-renewable resources, right? That is another concern when you're talking about resources and material consumption. People have worked on how much people consume, right? I think that tomorrow's class we will be doing this footprintcalculator.org. There's a website where you can actually figure out what is your footprint, right? Based on the way you live, your lifestyle, the food you eat, how you travel, and all that. You can calculate that. And people have come up with some numbers. What is the global average? What is the individual's footprint? What can be the nation's average footprint? A lot of interesting calculations and comparisons you can make. But there are two things here. There's a biocapacity, which the earth itself can is available for us, okay? And what is your footprint? And if you multiply it by the, if you look at the nation's footprint, okay, it's a total consumption footprint. That is the availability, this is the consumption. And then if there is a mismatch between the two, consumption again is broken down into your production, if you look at it as a nation, right? How much it is exported, how much is getting imported, okay? The sum net total would be the consumption footprint of the nation, okay? And if there is a mismatch, if there is a deficit, okay, that means this is mostly about the renewable resources. So you have a quota. One of your questions in the Mentimeter, there is an annual quota, how much it can be replenished, okay? It varies from one country to the other. The biocapacity varies, the consumption is also varying, okay? And then if we look at the deficit, there's some more links I have shared. We can look at it probably in the next session where we will be doing those calculations. So when there is a deficit, when and we are trying to use more and more, then we are actually eating into our reserve for the next year, okay? So if you look at this Earth Overshoot Day concept, it basically tells us when we are overshooting our quota, right? And if you look at this image, in 1971 we just made it. No, our consumption was equivalent to our biocapacity. Okay, but then after that, ever since, this is every year's data has been plotted. It's a spiraling. It's spiraling down to almost now. I think the question was on July 24th, 2025. This year, we have overshot the budget, and now we are taking it from our reserve. Okay, this is not sustainable, right? Sustainability is when we actually, what was happening in 71, right? Well, it's the same concept what I introduced, the four different aspects, right? Biodiversity loss, pollution, climate change, resources, right? A depletion of resources. But different people have started rethinking about it and quantifying the impacts of our human on the planet in different ways, right? So this environmental impact categories were put together for the LCA, which we will be discussing in depth over the course of this. So when you're talking about LCA, you will be doing an impact also, right? And in the LCA tools, you will find that there are about 12 different impact categories which will be quantified when you do an LCA, right? And GHG emissions or climate change is one of those. Can you recognize all of them? Are you aware of all of them? How many of you are not aware of any of these impacts? Water use will be one impact. If we're doing comparisons between products, we will be looking at how much water consumption happens. Land use, this is also not talked about much, there is also an impact on land use. If you're planning a product, okay, an industry, it is using up land space, right, which is probably taken out of probably an agricultural land. The biggest debate in our country is whenever there is a project proposed by the government, there is a lot of environmentalists, holding their protest, right? So in Chennai again, recently they want to expand the airport, right? They located a place called Parandur on the national highway to Bangalore, Chennai, Bangalore, and it's a huge space. Big international airports needs thousands of hectares of land, and of course that land will have water bodies, it will have agricultural land. You can't go for thousands of hectares of plain barren land anywhere, right? So every project needs these kind of resources, right? Water, land, again the big pollution to the air, water, and there will be waste generated. Okay, so land use is something which is a major impact, land use, and followed by degradation. Acidification, ocean acidification, surface water acidification, even terrestrial land soil acidification, okay, is happening because of the development processes. Okay, so there is always a debate, right? Sometimes you think they are right. Of course, we need an airport. Anybody who has traveled through Chennai airport and you've traveled to Delhi or Bangalore airport, you will know the stark difference, right, in terms of the facilities, the comfort level, and all that. Chennai still, we are just expanding whatever we have, but we have not really redrawn the whole airport map. So similar to that, aspirational, people want these comforts, right? Cities want development. So there is always two sides to the coin, okay? And we can't be also, because we are all environmentally conscious, we are environmental engineers, we can't be too much on this side also, right? All of us want to travel, right? And we don't want delays in our flights, so we want better airports. So where to draw the line, right? That's always a debate, and sustainable development is all about that, right? So then we have toxicities, human toxicity, ecotoxicity, not just for our health, but all the living things, starting from planktons, phytoplankton, zooplanktons, fish, animals, okay? Ozone depletion, we all know about the big ozone hole story, and that is one thing we can be proud of, right? The closure of the ozone hole, one big thing which humanity could collectively make a change. Okay, but we have to be careful that it is not again expanding. Okay, so that is an important impact. Ecotoxicity, I already talked about it. Eutrophication, we all know about it, right? Nitrates and phosphates. Resource, already it's covered the last. Okay, and yeah, there can be ionizing radiation, and also I think the new that is coming under the planetary boundaries. Yeah, so these are the impact categories which the LCA usually covers, and then comes another concept, right? These are all, I would say, same wine in different bottles, or we can say improvisations of the concepts which were developed early on, starting from triple planetary crisis to the planetary boundary concept. Okay, so in the planetary boundary concept, the impacts were quantified in a different way. Again, this time they wanted to raise an alarm bell. Where are we? Instead of just talking about the impacts, how close are we to the danger line, right? Have we crossed it, or are we about to cross it? Okay, or are we in the safe zone? Okay, they try to put the whole concept in that way, and they've identified 9 planetary boundaries, right? Most of you answered it right. And again, climate change will be there in all, and biosphere integrity, it's about the biodiversity loss, land use change, impacts on the land, fresh water, Biogeochemical flows is again the eutrophication, which was discussed earlier in the LCA, impact, ocean acidification, and also surface water acidification will come here. Atmospheric aerosol loading, that's another serious concern with respect to pollution, with respect to climate change and weather related and ozone depletion. So it's like same things. Some have been added to it and some has been highlighted. Novel entities are added to this, right? So novel entities are new and emerging contaminants coming up. Like I said, chemicals are produced every day and they are manifested in different. The impact is manifested. PFAS is one thing which has been talked about in recent times, right? If you go to any conference, almost 90% of the papers are on PFAS and microplastics, right? Those are the talk of the town in recent times in environmental engineering research. So new chemicals are being brought in, and for many of those, we don't even know the impact. They're yet to see the impact. No, PFAS, we didn't know 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't realize. We thought it was a wonder chemical. When our non-stick pans were becoming non-stick, all of us had enjoyed it, right? So we come to know about it only later. Lead, for that matter. We used lead left and right in all things. Then we know that, oh my God, it's neurotoxic. So we all learn about it. So there are still some disasters waiting for us to learn more about it. And so this shows what are the planetary boundaries which have exceeded. Okay, and I think this month an announcement has been made that the ocean acidification boundary has also been crossed. The green zone is the safe zone. Now ocean acidification also comes into the exceeded boundary or risky zone. Okay, so yes, over from 2009 we have been adding to this, right? So and now we have added one more. Okay, so what do we do about it? I think I've been giving all of very gloomy day scenarios to you, right? So we need to look at what are the how do we solve all these problems, right? And beyond, we've been talking more about planet and the impacts and all that, but we have not talked about how people, we've talked a little bit about people with respect to their health, okay, but how about their livelihood, how about their standard of living, okay, how are they impacted by these? That is also an impact. Communities get impacted. Okay, if you are impacting a river, okay, where fishermen are dependent upon the fish, then there is an impact on their livelihoods. It's not just the health, right? Similarly, when you're doing a lot of focus on controlling pollution, okay, like if you're going to have high-tech solutions to control your clothing manufacturing unit, right? What will happen if the industries are forced to do it? In Tamil Nadu, again, in India, zero liquid discharge is the norm, right? In all industries where pollution, red category industries, they call. So, where water pollution was a big issue, spoiled all the rivers and groundwater, zero liquid discharge is the norm. So, they cannot discharge any liquid, right? And it's enforced since 2005. It has been enforced strictly, right? So what happens in that case? They start putting RO plants in all their industry. Okay, even you know how much RO costs even at home when you're putting a small filter in your home, how much electricity cost, how much replacement cost of the membranes and all that. Imagine a million, several million liters of day production factories putting RO plants and running them. Okay, so how much of cost it's going to incur apart from the environmental significance of energy and all that, they're going to cost more. And what will the industry do if it's going to cost more? Exactly, you got it. So it's, they increase, if they are doing the right job and they are incurring the cost, they will increase the price of the product, and that is going to have another social impact on us, right? So people, affordability of clothing is going to become questionable, right? Even for the poor people at least. Okay, and So there is a lot of social dimensions. Okay, if that's why I said we need to balance everything and come up with a solution. Okay, which puts everything, these three pillars, like this profit. All companies work towards profit, right? And when planet requires that profit to go down, okay, then it affects the profit, it affects the people. Okay, so they're all so interconnected, right? That's just one example, and we can have so many examples as we go along, right? So somehow we need to have a balance between these three. Industries need survive. We need industries. Industries are not the bad guys all the time, right? They are the ones who produce goods for us. So somewhere we need to have a balance, right? That is one thing. So this is what this recently one scientist called Kate Raworth. I was reading her paper, Economist. Okay, she tried to put all these things together and see how we can, while we are managing the environment, how socially it is going to be affecting. Like I said, the cost going up, right? So there is a we cannot just completely be hitting on trying to get things done the perfect manner, some via media. It's a more practical solution she's trying to give. There's a lot of, we can have a lot of debate around that, but she says that there is a small bandwidth over which we can work. Environmental concerns can be addressed provided there is the acceptance. The society wants the clean environment, but of course affordability becomes a concern. Okay, so how does government, how can government play a role in bringing this balance, right? So there is a bandwidth over which you cannot go extreme ecological ceiling like what is shown here may cost too much, right? So which the society cannot afford. Um, there's a lot of things which we can talk about here. So you need to understand that these are all interlinked, okay, and somewhere we need to come up with a balance, okay. So the sustainable development goals, 17 sustainable development goals, brings all this in one framework, right? So environment is there, the society is there, so we can't, the government needs to balance all this, being the, so they can give some subsidies to make the industries do the right thing, but at the same time they also have a fixed budget, right? So how much they can go, that is another question. They have to meet the other goals like zero poverty. There are other things for the government to concern, to take a note of and plan their activities. So these are all the, apart from environment, if we can say environment, and our discussions will be centered around probably the salinity, clean water and sanitation. We'll be talking about affordable and clean energy. We'll be touching upon some of the sustainable development goals, probably industry, innovation, infrastructure, responsible consumption and production, sustainable cities and communities, climate action, of course, and on the impact categories, we'll be touching on 14 and 15, life on land, life below water. Okay. So the social dimensions are the others, poverty, hunger, quality education, gender equality, decent work and economic growth. Okay, so they bring everything into one platform, the social, environmental, and peace and justice. Okay, this is also one of the sustainable development goals, and partnership for the goals. We can't just do it alone. We need partnerships, right? And partnerships, each one has a role to play. And if you put together stakeholders, they are like government, industries, research and technology institutes like us, society, individuals, each of us have a role to play, right? The government as a policy maker at the highest level, they have the biggest responsibility and they have the power, right, to make things work, put the right regulations to make things work. So what all the governments can do, of course, if you're talking about pollution, basic regulatory limits, many of the pollutants, we are still having a small set of pollutants in our drinking water standards. We need to expand those to include all the new and emerging pollutants, right? Similar to that, air, soil, everything. Regulatory authorities have a big role to play when it comes to environmental impact. And larger things like eco-labeling of products, right, which is already happening in other parts of the world. Europe has been leading this effort. So people can be aware. If you want to buy a product, you would like to know right now, even for organic, when you go to an organic vegetable shop, some are organic and some are not, right? So how do we know that this is organic? Okay. uh, just without, just not by the labels, but you want to have proof, right? Because anybody can say it's organic and sell it at a higher price. So eco labeling is very important for consumers to be very conscious about what they are buying if you want to do the right thing. Okay. And even one step beyond, if you buy, if you're getting any products from Europe, you would have seen like now they have carbon footprint. This much CO2 was emitted in the making of this product. This much of water was used in the making of the product. They've gone multiple steps beyond by eco-labeling their products. Okay. And yeah, if recycled content is there in your product, you can add that. That will give a value add for buyers who are going to be environmentally conscious. Okay. And standards, as I said, subsidies will go a long way. Right. Recently, there's a lot of subsidies. Solar is one good example in India and everywhere. Right. The government is encouraging people to go through the environmental way by providing subsidies and to discourage the tariffs, right? Fuel surcharge and all that is a way to discourage people from buying highly fuel consuming vehicles, right? When you go into the luxury market, everything goes up when you're buying a car, right? It's kind of a deterrent, but I don't think when people are affording that big car, then they don't even mind paying those extra surcharges. But we need to step up those kind of, right? And then EPR, EPD, we've heard about all this. Extended producer responsibility. EPD is environment product declaration. Yeah, the industry people are very familiar with these. Digital product passport, that is another thing which is coming up. So every product will have a QR code where you can scan. I'll bring my the cap I had. I got one from Switzerland when I went for a meeting. So you just scan it and it will tell you where it has recycled products and where those came from, right? The raw material. So you get more and more information about the products you use, so you can be more aware of um, uh, how much is your contribution, right? As individuals, we all contribute to the environment by what we wear, how we travel, right? And what we eat, everything makes an impact. So we can have conscious. And industry, of course, has a lot to play, just like government. The efforts taken by the industry to track where they are getting the materials from. Okay, we'll be talking a lot about it in the coming days. How much, why we are doing this is just a general session, but then we are all aware of all this, okay? But then putting a number to it makes it more authentic, okay, and more impactful. That is why we do all these things: carbon footprints, water footprints, LCA, because the government has not been taking much effort so far, because we have just been doing the talking very qualitatively. Okay, LCA and other tools now gives us the power to put numbers to it, right? And stop all the debates, right? The whole plastic also, there's a lot of debate going on saying that, okay, the plastic producers say that, okay, plastic is not a problem, right? If plastics were not there, this would have been the impact, okay? And then all the other environmentalists saying the other way. And the government gets confused, right? It's very confusing. When the government is confused, then even the common people are also confused. But now if you put a number to it, right, it takes so much to make a plastic. This is the embodied energy, and it's not just the materials. Okay, you have to look at the entire product life cycle and all that, what you will be learning. Okay, makes it something which is very, you can take it to the court of law, right? There will not be any debate once you have these numbers. Okay. And it helps people make a decision. It helps individuals make a decision. Once you know that you're choosing between two, let us say, cell phones, in terms of impact, which is more, which is bad, which is good, or relatively, okay, then okay, this gives us the power to choose. Okay, the government's the power to decide. Okay, so it's very, very important to get these tools, understand these tools, so we can have some meaningful debates and meaningful decision making. Okay, so the industry has a very, very important role to play by facilitating all this, by making sure that they manufacture the low eco-friendly as much as possible, right? So this is a very, very tricky thing to do. It's not easy. Like I said, there are multiple stakeholders, right? The industry wants to give the best product. It has to be competitive with their others in the market, right? Competitive in terms of quality, competitive in terms of cost, right? Otherwise, they're going to lose their business. And if they're going to have eco-friendly products, how are they going to balance? A very, very tricky thing to do, but the whole world is moving in that direction. Okay, so in India, as I told you, textile industry example, when our 2005, when our government started imposing these zero liquid discharge norms, the textile processing cost shot up, right? So the government gave subsidies to build for the capital infrastructure. They gave loans, they gave even 50% cost to build the infrastructure. In spite of that, the operating cost was very high, right? So it added the cost of the textiles, and Tamil Nadu was the first one to implement it in a big way. Okay, but there was an internal competition between Tamil Nadu and, like, say, Punjab and Maharashtra, where the norms were not imposed. Each state had a different their own, policies and all that. So Tamil Nadu textile manufacturers, traditionally Tirupur in Tamil Nadu is the hub for the global textile industry, right? So they started losing their market to their own within India, Maharashtra and Punjab, and Tirupur textile industry people moved to Punjab and Maharashtra. So they have relaxed norms, and their products would be cheaper, and they could balance the loss they are getting in Tamil Nadu, right? So there's a lot of dynamics here, and when slowly the country started pushing other states also, then Bangladesh became our competitor because there's very poor regulations there, and so it's a chain reaction, right? So unless it is globally implemented, these norms and regulations, these kind of disparities will be there, right? So we need to understand the big picture also. Okay, so as individuals, yes, we have an expert on behavioral change, right? Who was talking about behavioral change? Yeah, yeah. So behavioral change can go a very, very long way. We can't just point fingers at industry, the government is not doing the right thing, but we have our own role to play a lot of different ways. Okay, it may be a small contribution, but together it becomes much more impactful compared to the government and the industry, right? So right from choosing the right products to opting for reuse, repair, refurbish, and properly disposing our waste, segregating them, everything plays a very important role, and that's the most difficult to achieve. Government, industry can be controlled by policies and regulations, but individuals, it's going to be very, very, is a very difficult thing to do. right? Recently, Indian government, Modi government came up with Lifestyle for Environment. There is a project called Lifestyle Change for Environment, right? And they sought ideas from all over the country to come up with best lifestyle changes practices which can make a difference to the environment. Okay, a life project, if you google LIFE, you'll find, and they have documented the top 75 best ideas for a change in the way in which behavior can impact environment. Okay. Of course, you're all here, academia students, you all have the link, the bridge or the enablers for all this, both the industry, government and individuals. There's a lot we can do starting from our research, by learning these tools, okay, educating people, educating the engineers in the manufacturing sector, educating the government employees. A lot of knowledge. These are all still very, very, what to say, new concepts, right? For those who are doing this, it may be something very well known, but you just go and talk to somebody outside, even a well educated, my own colleagues in civil engineering, they have no idea about life cycle assessment, right? If you're not doing it, it's like a new concept, right? So multi-layered plastics, we talk a lot about it, no, your packaging plastics, but just outside, even the well educated don't know what is the impact of the multi-layered plastic versus a single plastic, a monomer plastic, right? So there's lot of education needs to be done, lot of research needs to be done, lot of innovation needs to be done, right? That's why we run all these competitions, what Bindu was mentioning, from school level to college level. Young minds need to think differently, out of the box, right? Otherwise, we'll get into the same old thing and we'll just be doing some tinkering, right? Some fresh, groundbreaking, new concepts have to come up from the young minds. So we need all that research, innovation, education, okay, along, and academia can do a lot towards that.